Have you ever watched someone's face shift from smug triumph to absolute panic in half a minute? That's exactly what happened to our HOA president, Ruby Miller. She caught sight of my wife's sidearm and decided she'd found her big moment. Next thing I knew, she was on the phone with 911, screaming like she'd just spotted a fugitive, armed woman threatening the neighborhood. She bellowed. From my window, I saw 6 squad cars come tearing down the street, brakes squealing, doors flying open, officers fanning out with weapons drawn, surrounding my wife. Ruby stood nearby, beaming, already rehearsing her "how I saved the community" speech. But then my wife calmly reached for her ID. Within 30 seconds, those same cops were standing at attention, nodding respectfully. From the first day I met Ruby, I knew she had 2 great loves: flawless order and an obsessive fixation on anything resembling a weapon. And let me tell you, when someone like that has influence over your day-to-day life, it's unsettling. She arrived at our doorstep less than 20 minutes after the moving truck pulled away, like she'd been timing it with military precision. She clutched an iPad against her chest, balanced a stack of papers thick enough to flatten a pigeon, and wore a smile that never reached her eyes. You know, Thoka, it says welcome, but actually means I'm filing away every detail for later use. Welcome to Oakwood Heights, she chirped, and I swear you could hear the exclamation mark. I'm Ruby Miller, your HOA president. I've already emailed you the community guideline as a 67 pages. Just need your signature confirming receipt. 67 pages. Who even writes that many rules for a neighborhood? As she spoke, her eyes darted over our yard, her fingers tapping on her tablet like she was doing a home inspection. I thought she was just being thorough until I noticed she was also recording with her phone. For the neighborhood newsletter, she explained when she caught me looking, but the camera was angled to capture our front door, driveway, even our windows. And without asking, then her phone rang, and she stepped away just far enough to think I couldn't hear. Bad assumption, and my hearing's fine. New family at 1847, she murmured. I'll keep an eye on them. No violations yet, but we'll see. Keep an eye on us? We'd barely unpacked a single box. Things really took off that night when my wife, Sophia, came home around 10. New job. First week late nights weren't unusual. She looked worn out, blazer wrinkled, hair in a messy bun that practically said, "Don't even ask." And at her hip, like always, her service weapon sat in its holster, part of her work uniform. I was getting the mail when Ruby appeared from behind a hedge, like a hawk spotting prey. "Excuse me," she called, dripping faux sweetness. Sophia froze mid-step, brow creased in mild confusion. Ruby's gaze dropped straight to the holster. "What exactly is that?" she asked, like my wife was carrying a live grenade. The thing I said. She wasn't alarmed. Most folks either get uneasy or curious around a gun. Ruby looked thrilled, like she'd stumbled upon exactly what she'd been hoping for. "It's a service weapon," Sophia said evenly. "Fully licensed, all legal permits." Ruby wasn't satisfied. She stepped closer, voice sharpening. "Service weapon? What kind of service requires that?" Sophia sighed. "Patients clearly wearing thin, specialized security work. It's a precaution for everyone's safety." She headed toward the door, keys jingling, clearly done with the conversation. But Ruby wasn't finished. "Specialized security? Here? Should the rest of us be worried?" Sophia stopped, turned slowly, and fixed her with a look that could ice over a volcano. "The kind of threats that require trained professionals to carry protection. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've had a long day." As we stepped inside, I caught sight of our neighbor Tom pretending to walk his dog despite the fact the dog was sitting in his living room window. He gave me a knowing shake of the head and mouthed, "Good luck." When Ruby finally retreated to her own place, Tom wandered over. "Your wife's got guts," he whispered. "Ruby's had issues with guns ever since Sia broken bar. Well, just be careful. She's got connections and doesn't like being told number." Later, through our window, I saw Ruby in her driveway, phone to her ear, gesturing animatedly toward our house. She hung up, pulled out her tablet, and began snapping photos, zooming in on details like she was building a case file. That night, I found Sophia at the kitchen table, laptop open, eyes narrowed at the screen. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Been digging," she said, fingers drumming on the table. There's a weird pattern of families moving out of here. Nothing solid, but my gut says we're not getting the whole story. Ruby Miller isn't just a nosy neighbor, she's something else entirely. She was right. Across the street, Ruby sat at her own computer, typing my wife's name into a search bar, a broken bar, and finding nothing. The look on her face said that it wasn't going to stop her. Ruby sat in her dimly lit office, the glow of her monitor casting shadows across her face. Every search she tried came up empty, different spellings, swapped name orders. Nothing worked. She drummed her fingers on the desk, clearly frustrated, then leaned in and typed one last phrase. Whatever she saw made her eyes go wide and her jaw slacken. "No way," she whispered to herself, the disbelief in her voice tinged with an excitement that should have set off alarm bells for us. "This is too good." She grabbed her phone, scrolled with purpose through her contacts, and stopped on a number she'd clearly been saving for the perfect moment. 2 rings later, she was speaking in a voice I'd never heard from her before, sharp, businesslike, and brimming with anticipation. "Thompson, it's Ruby Miller. We've got a situation developing, and I think you are going to want in on this opportunity." 72 hours later, the legal floodgates open at not 1 notice, but 3, all centered on my wife's firearm. We're talking certified mail, embossed letterhead, the works. Like some bizarre legal holiday morning, except no one was unwrapping gifts. The first came via email Monday at exactly 9 a.m. Subject line: violation notice, immediate attention required. Ruby had CC'd an attorney, which should have been my first clue. This was beyond simple HOA bickering. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Reed, you are hereby notified of a violation of HOA Regulation 3.4.5, a possession of weapons causing reasonable concern among residents." Reasonable concern. This from the same woman who'd practically done a happy dance when she spotted Sophia's holster. The second document was even better, a petition signed by 23 of the 25 households, all voicing grave fears about firearms in our peaceful community. 23 signatures in 3 days. I had to give Ruby credit as she moved fast. The request was simple: remove all weapons from our property or face appropriate safety measures. The third was the PA-DIRASIS-RA- copyright assistance, a $500 monthly enhanced security fee for the extra monitoring our home apparently required due to elevated risk factors. Translation: a Ruby's hobby had just turned into a bill, but something didn't sit right with me. The signatures were fresh, but the petition paper had that faint yellowing of something that had been around a while. Curiosity got the better of me, so I started knocking on doors under the guise of friendly introductions. Mrs. Peterson, 4 houses down, was eager to chat. "Oh yes, Ruby came by a couple of weeks ago asking about gun safety," she said cheerfully. 2 weeks ago. We'd only been in the neighborhood 10 days. My stomach tightened. Ruby had been laying the groundwork before we'd even moved in. That afternoon, I caught her power washing her spotless driveway. "Funny timing on that petition," I said lightly. "You were collecting signatures before you even knew we had a gun." Impressive foresight. She shut off the washer and leveled me with a stare cold enough to frost glass. "We screen all new residents thoroughly, Adam. Security is our top priority here." "Screen us how?" I asked. "And how exactly did you know about the gun before Sophia even came home?" That stopped her. The fake smile faded. "We have our methods," she said, her tone dropping, "and we know things more than you might think." That evening, Sophia came home looking wrecked. "Someone sent the petition to my boss," she said, dropping into a chair. "They included photos of our house and a broken bar, exaggerated claims about neighborhood safety. Now my supervisor wants this settled within 48 hours. I called my friend Alex, who works in IT. "I need you to check something," I told him, giving him the HOA's website. An hour later, his voice came through the phone, uneasy. "This ISA broken bar strange. Your HOA site has tracking code linked straight to city government servers. I've never seen that before." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. "It means someone in city government is watching every move via emails, complaints, violation notices in real time. This isn't petty neighborhood politics. This is coordinated." The next morning, a dark sedan with tinted windows appeared across the street. The driver watched Ruby's house through binoculars, snapping photos and jotting notes. When Ruby came out for her mail, she froze at the sight, but I wasn't the only one watching. Tom, from across the street, was tracking the sedan too. When the driver stepped out briefly, Tom took a quick photo of the license plate and fired off a text. I caught part of it through my window. "Your guys are here early, could be a problem." By noon, the car was gone, but Tom kept pacing his lawn, checking his phone. When Ruby finally re-emerged, she strode straight to his house. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told me plenty. From my window, I couldn't hear what Ruby and Tom were saying, but their posture told the whole story. Tense, urgent, both of them throwing glances toward our house like we were a crime scene. Eventually, Ruby pulled out her phone and spoke rapidly into it while Tom stood there, nodding like a man who already knew the plan. That night, Sophia sat across from me at the kitchen table. Her expression said in the "this is serious" way I'd come to recognize over 5 years of marriage. "Adama Broken Bar, there's something you need to know about my job," she began, then paused, carefully picking her words. "This thing with Ruby, it's not random. She knows exactly who I am and what I do. This gun drama, it's staged. Someone tipped her off before we even moved in, someone with access to my background." I stared at her, the pieces snapping together in my head. "She's working to discredit me," Sophia continued, "before I've even started my new position. We have 47 hours to figure out who's pulling the strings and why. If we don't a broken bar, it's not just the job I lose. My career will be over. And Ruby, she's just getting warmed up." When paperwork didn't get her the result she wanted, Ruby switched to something far more effective via public fear. Within a single day, she launched the Safe Oakwood initiative, a polished campaign that racked up 8,000 followers faster than I could hit refresh. This wasn't a nosy neighbor's blog, it was coordinated psychological warfare. The video dropped Tuesday morning, titled "The Hidden Danger Living Among Us." My stomach sank just reading it. The production quality was professional, perfect lighting, clean audio, sweeping shots of our streets edited to look like the prelude to a horror film. Ruby, framed in soft light, spoke directly to the camera with the poise of a seasoned news anchor. "Friends, I'm speaking to you today because I'm genuinely afraid for our community's safety." The footage that followed was simple but devastating. Telephoto shots of Sophia's gun, blurred just enough to feel illicit, taken from multiple angles. Ruby's voice narrated over the images, framing Sophia as a shadowy figure with dangerous secrets, refusing to explain herself to her welcoming neighbors. She didn't outright accuse you, she didn't need to. Fear doesn't need facts to work. Within 24 hours, the video had 100,000 views. The comments flooded in, outrage pouring from all over the state. But something didn't smell right. A big chunk of the early responses came from accounts barely a week old. Manufactured outrage disguised as grassroots concern. Sophia's phone started ringing before we'd even finished watching. Her supervisor's voice was tight, sharp. "Read a broken bar, please tell me that video isn't about you. Tell me you didn't move into a neighborhood and start a firearms controversy without clearing it." Sophia tried to explain, but he cut her off. "Fix it, 48 hours. However you have to." Later that day, I stopped at a downtown coffee shop. Ruby's daughter, Zoe, accidentally bumped into me, spilling her drink. In the brief chaos, she pressed a folded napkin into my hand before walking away. On it, written in pencil, "Mom's safe password, Freedom 2024, help me." Before she disappeared around the corner, she mouthed a single word, "a please." On the back, 22 years of hell. She controls everything. People think she's protecting the neighborhood, but they don't know what she's really protecting. Back home, Ruby's campaign escalated again. She posted high-res photos of Sophia's goon in no blurs, this time with the caption, "If something happens to our families, remember that I tried to warn everyone." Some said I was overreacting. I pray they're right. The comments section detonated. Shares multiplied. People tagged local reporters, and a new petition calling for the removal of armed residents hit 1,500 signatures in 6 hours. Ruby was everywhere in the threads, playing the concerned neighbor card perfectly. "I don't want trouble, but we have children here. What if there's an accident? What if she snaps?" That night, Tom knocked on our door holding a manila folder thick enough to bruise someone. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I'm not actually retired," he said quietly. "I'm a private investigator. 5 families have hired me in the last 2 years to investigate Ruby Miller." The folder was a bombshell. Financial records showed Ruby had taken nearly $50,000 in consulting fees from an outfit called Neighborhood Security Solutions. Emails between her and city officials discussed problem residents and intervention strategies. There were photos of every family who'd lived in our house before, USA families who'd mysteriously moved out after conflicts with Ruby. 5 families in 3 years, Tom explained. Each one had something she decided was a threat to her control. A family with teens who played music too loud. A retired vet who complained about HOA overreach. A young couple who dared to ask where the home money really went. Then Tom slid over the photo that froze my blood. The Wilson family of 4 smiling faces in our front yard, each marked with a red X. They lasted 6 months, Tom said. When Ruby found out the father was undocumented, she started a security risk campaign. ICE showed up one morning. The family scattered. The house was for sale a week later. I swallowed hard. "And the others?" Tom's expression turned grim. "They left rather than fight." Ruby knows exactly how to find people's weak points, a broken bar, and then she grinds them until they break. Rumors about environmental hazards, that was her tactic for the last couple. I glanced up from the pile of evidence, my mind racing. "So what's our weak spot? What's she aiming for?" Tom stayed quiet for a beat before unlocking his phone and pulling up an old news article. The headline jumped out first: Detroit Police Department Corruption Investigation. My eyes moved to a photo of officers in handcuffs, and one face jolted my memory. "There's more," Tom said, his tone low. "I wasn't hired by 5 families, I was hired by 6. And the 6th a broken bar." He flicked a glance toward Ruby's house. "They didn't just leave, they vanished. 3 years ago, right after threatening to expose her ties to City Hall." He began packing up the papers. "Your wife isn't just dealing with rubbish, she's up against a whole network that's been running this city from the shadows for years." My phone buzzed. A text from Zoe: "Meet me tonight, back door of a coffee shop. Come alone. Mom thinks I'm studying, but I found her real office in the basement. You need to see what she's been doing to people." I handed the phone to Tom. He read the message twice, then gave me a look I couldn't quite place. "A broken bar. There's something else about that 6th family." He hesitated, then shook his head. First, let's hear what Zoe has to show us, then I'll explain why I'm really here." Ruby had been setting the stage for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment when her plan could detonate in under a minute of chaos. Later, when I reviewed the police reports to understand how she'd nearly destroyed Sophia's career, the sheer precision of it all felt like military strategy. She had positioned neighbors like chess pieces. Mrs. Patterson paced the sidewalk with her Doga, a dog that had already been walked twice that day, checking her watch as if timing her moves. The Johnsons were gardening in their front yard, pulling weeds they'd already removed earlier in the week, angled just right for a full view of our driveway. 2 others loitered near the mailboxes, far enough to avoid direct involvement but close enough to play the role of concerned witnesses. The real power play, though, was in her tech setup. 3 cameras hidden at strategic points around our homes, all wired to stream directly to her social media. The stream titles were already queued up: "Emergency Armed Confrontation in Progress" and "Live Neighborhood Safety Crisis." She'd even been teasing her followers with cryptic posts about finally revealing the truth about our dangerous neighbor. Sophia arrived home like she always did, looking worn from a long day, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, blazer rumpled from hours of meetings. The service weapon rested on her hip, exactly where it belonged per department rules and her own safety. She stepped out, locked the car, and headed toward the front door, unaware she was walking straight into a trap. Every movement was caught from multiple angles. Ruby's 911 call began with theatrical urgency. "I need help immediately," she shouted, her voice carrying across the street and straight into the microphones feeding thousands of online viewers. "There's a woman with a gun standing in front of my house. She just threatened me, said she'd handle me if I didn't stop asking questions about her past. I'm terrified for my life." The police response was swift, exactly what Ruby wanted. 3 squad cars roared in, sirens and lights blazing. officers leaping out with hands hovering near their weapons. The lead officer's voice rang clear. "Ma'am, stop right there. Keep your hands visible and turn around slowly." Sophia complied, turning with the measured calm of someone who fully understood the stakes and how to avoid escalation. Ruby kept performing for both the officers and her swelling online audience. "She's been intimidating the neighborhood for weeks," she called out, ensuring the cameras caught every word. "She's hiding something dangerous, and I fear for our children." The viewer count soared past 5,000, the comment section filling with everything from anxious pleas to unhinged demands for immediate action. "Ma'am, can I see your identification?" Wilson asked, his tone calm but edged with the vigilance of a man who'd handled hundreds of similar calls. He moved with practiced care, while his partner shifted to the right flank. Two additional officers fanned out to secure clear sightlines and exits, a by-the-book positioning for a potentially armed civilian. Sophia slowly raised her hands, making them clearly visibly an intentional gesture that told me she'd faced scenarios like this before. "It's in my jacket pocket. I'm going to reach for it slowly," she said clearly, ensuring every officer understood both her words and her intentions. Each movement was measured, precisely the kind of control that comes from training, where one wrong move could spiral into disaster. Across the street, Ruby's voice cut through the tension, her commentary aimed squarely at her live audience. "See how calm she is? That's not normal. Innocent people would be shaken. She's too at ease around cops, like she's been in this situation before." Neighbors whispered among themselves, phones raised, recording from every angle while Ruby painted Sophia as a seasoned criminal caught at last. Sophia kept her tone steady. "I'm reaching into my jacket now." Every officer could track her movements, every detail deliberate. Her hand slipped into the inner pocket with careful precision. But when she withdrew her wallet, it wasn't a driver's license that caught the light, it was a badge. Not just any badge, the kind that makes seasoned officers straighten on instinct. Sunlight flashed off gold, framing the official seal and the words that shifted the entire scene. "Chief of Police Sophia Reed, badge number 0001. Wilson saw it first. His eyes widened, posture snapping into formal attention as if a switch had been thrown. "Holy!" He cut himself short, then spoke with crisp formality. "That's a broken bar. That's the chief's badge." Recognition flickered across his face as he connected the woman in front of him to the leader they'd been anticipating. The other officers noticed immediately, their own stances shifting from tactical alertness to outright respect. In seconds, the supposed threat became their commanding officer. "Attention!" Wilson barked, voice loud enough for the entire street to hear. 4 officers snapped to attention in unison, saluting with precision drilled into them since academy days. "This is Chief Reed. Apologies, Mama, we weren't informed of your presence." This was entirely our error. Every neighbor heard it, every camera captured it, every viewer on Ruby's stream witnessed the story flip in real time. Ruby's expression went from confusion, to dawning realization, to the horror of understanding she had just live-streamed a false accusation against the chief of police. But Ruby Miller wasn't the type to crumble when cornered. Her eyes narrowed with the dangerous resolve of someone determined to rewrite the narrative. She addressed her audience with calculated calm. "Viewers, what would you have done if you were Sophia in that moment? Because this is far from over." Within 6 hours, Chief Spygate was the top trending topic nationwide. What Ruby didn't realize was that she'd just handed me exactly what I needed to dismantle 5 years of manipulation, deceit, and what I was beginning to suspect were outright crimes. Her damage control was to double down. Rather than delete the footage, she left it online with a fresh caption designed to ignite outrage. "Police chief hides identity from neighbors. Why keep it a secret? What else is she hiding? If law enforcement won't be transparent, how can we trust them?" By then, the video had racked up over 300,000 views, with news outlets grabbing it faster than I could keep track. Within hours, Ruby had enlisted a crisis PR team, their polished fingerprints visible in every new talking point. This was no longer neighborhood gossip, it had become a coordinated media assault on Sophia's credibility. Ruby's push to twist the story relied heavily on professional-level media manipulation. But in her rush to control the narrative, she made one fatal miscalculation. She overlooked Zoe, and Zoe had been preparing for her counterattack far longer than Ruby's 3-week smear campaign. Around midnight, My phone buzzed with a message from Zoe. "Meet me at the 24-hour diner downtown." The urgency in those words told me she'd uncovered something explosive. By the time I walked in, Zoe was already in a back booth, her laptop glowing amid stacks of documents. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I've been waiting 22 years for someone to stand up to her," she began without any small talk. "When I saw that video, when I saw Mom trying to wreck another innocent family, I knew it was time." She spun the laptop toward me. My stomach dropped. On the screen were financial records, email exchanges, and even surveillance photos of dozens of families targeted. "For 5 years, Zoe said, her voice trembling with restrained fury, "Mom's been running this whole like a criminal syndicate. She doesn't just hassle people, she dismantles their lives for profit." The proof was staggering. Over $200,000 in consulting fees funneled to Ruby from a company called Neighborhood Security Solutions in just 3 years. And the kicker? The lead investor was none other than Councilman Thompson, the same Thompson from Sophia's past in Detroit. Zoe scrolled through incriminating emails like she was flipping through a crime novel. Thompson uses Mom to push out anyone who could cause him trouble, people who question contracts, oppose his development projects, or stand in the way of his business interests. Mom identifies them, grinds them down with harassment until they sell. Then Thompson's company scoops up their homes for cheap. It wasn't an exaggeration. Over 40 families in 3 years, all forced out under the guise of neighborhood safety. Ruby's files contained every weapon she'd used: debts, health issues, immigration status, anything exploitable. But one file made my hands tremble. Read a Detroit connection. Ruby had known exactly who Sophia was from day one. The file was a dossier of newspaper clippings from the corruption scandal that ended Sophia's Detroit career, photographs of her testifying against Thompson, and a meticulously crafted timeline of events. "Thompson's been biding his time," Zoe whispered. "When he learned Chief Reed was moving here, he set Mom in motion to destroy her before she could uncover his operations in this city." As we pieced things together, my phone rang. Sophia's voice was taut with tension. "Adama Internal Affairs just opened an investigation. They're saying I violated public trust by not identifying myself to the community and for accepting housing without disclosure. They're implying ethics violations." I glanced at Zoe, who gave a grave nod. "It's worse than you think," I told Sophia. "Meet us at the diner on 5th Street and bring that gun. We're going to need every shred of evidence." Sophia arrived looking like the day had aged her by years. The confident posture I was used to was gone, replaced by the weight of someone under siege from all directions. But when Zoe slid the records across the table, her eyes sharpened. "This is exactly what Thompson did in Detroit," Sophia murmured, scanning the spreadsheets. "Back then, he used community groups to smear anyone who got too close to his corruption. The moment I dug into his construction contracts, he launched a similar smear campaign against me." Then Zoe pulled out her trump card, a phone with a recording app that had been running for 6 months straight. "Mom thinks I'm just some clueless college kid," Zoe said, her tone laced with bitterness. "She has no idea I've been recording every call, every meeting, every conversation about the people she's destroyed." The clips were damning. Ruby discussing payouts with Thompson, strategizing our takedown in detail, laughing about problems like the Wilson family and how ICE conveniently solved that one, and bragging about her spotless record of forcing out targeted residents. Sophia reminded us that illegally recorded audio couldn't be used in court. Zoe just shook her head. "We don't have to. Mom's arrogance will do the work for us. We just need her to repeat it in a situation where recording is legal." That's when it hit me. Monday night's home meeting. Ruby had called an emergency session to whip up fear, rally her loyalists, and push a vote of no confidence in local law enforcement. It was meant to be a public ambush. "She thinks she'll control the stage," I said, the plan forming in my head. "We let her think she's winning right up until we flip it on her." Sophia's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw respect there. "What's your play?" Zoe's lips curved into a rare smile. "Mom lives for attention. She can't resist showing off how clever she thinks she is. Monday night, we'll give her the biggest audience of her life, and she'll confess to everything herself." 20 hours before that meeting, Sophia sat in our darkened living room, staring at her gun and badge side by side on the coffee table. They're supposed to stand for justice, she said softly, but right now, neither one can save my career, a broken bar, or us. Everything was unraveling faster than we could keep up. The internal affairs probe had now expanded, questioning Chief Reed's judgment and her transparency in dealing with the community. 3 members of the city council had gone on record calling for her resignation. The police union's silence was deafening as Sophia knew that meant trouble, but the real storm was brewing at the emergency home meeting Ruby had scheduled for Monday night. Over 200 people had confirmed they'd attend, and judging by the chatter on social media, few if any would be there to show support. Ruby had spent the weekend assembling what looked like a public execution disguised as a community forum. The agenda she circulated was a masterclass in manipulation, community safety concerns regarding local law enforcement leadership, discussion of trust and transparency in neighborhood relations, vote of confidence in current police administration. Every single item was carefully crafted to put Sophia on trial before a furious crowd. But Zoe, Tom, and I had been working our own counterattack. The hidden office Zoe had discovered was far worse than the financial records hinted at. Ruby had been conducting surveillance on neighborhood families for years, compiling blackmail material and funneling it to Thompson's network. Together, they had systematically removed anyone who threatened their operations. The audio recordings Zoe had made couldn't be used in court, but they revealed something invaluably: Ruby's fatal flaw. She couldn't resist boasting about her schemes. Once she thought she'd won, every family she had driven away had endured a final encounter where Ruby laid out exactly how she had broken them step by step. "She's going to try the same thing with Sophia," Tom predicted as we strategized in Zoe's car on Sunday night. "The moment she's convinced she's beaten her, she'll want Sophia to know exactly how she pulled it off. That's when we move." It was a gamble. The whole plan relied on timing and Ruby's arrogance to hand us the rope we'd use to hang her. Detective Park, who had been quietly observing the situation, finally revealed his cards. He had been investigating Ruby's network for 8 months as part of a broader county-wide corruption probe involving HOA fraud. "We've been looking for a way to get her to confess on record," he said. "This meeting might give us that chance." The problem? Ruby knew how to protect herself. She'd be surrounded by allies controlling the microphones and agenda. Any attempt to confront her directly would be cut short before we could lay out the evidence. We needed her to expose herself willingly in front of witnesses and in a way she couldn't spin or erase. That's when Sophia made a surprising call. "I'm going to that meeting unarmed," she said firmly. "No gun, no badge, no authority, just a neighbor who's been falsely accused." When I started to object, she stopped me with a raised hand. "Ruby's entire narrative is that I abuse power. The moment I walk in there as a cop, I give her proof." Zoe's contribution was the riskiest. She would secretly live-stream the meeting to a social media account created solely to reveal her mother's actions. "There may be 200 people in that room," she said, "but thousands will be watching online. Mom can't control the story when it's being recorded from every angle." The night before the meeting, an anonymous package arrived that nearly derailed everything. Inside was a photograph taken in Detroit 3 years ago. Sophia standing beside a man in handcuffs outside a courthouse. His face was circled in red, and a note in block letters read, "Ask your wife about Detective Marcus Williams. Ask her why he's dead." My hands trembled as I showed Sophia the picture. Her face went pale, and for a second I thought she might collapse. "Marcus was my partner in Detroit," she said quietly. "He helped me gather the evidence against Thompson's corruption ring." 2 weeks after Thompson was arrested, Marcus died in what they called a car accident. "Was it really an accident?" I asked, though her expression had already told me the answer. She shook her head slowly. "Thompson's people made sure he couldn't testify at the federal trial." When I realized what they'd done, I knew I couldn't stay in Detroit. "That's why I came here, to get away from Thompson and his people." "Except Thompson followed you," I said, the final pieces sliding into place. "He's been setting this up for 3 years. Sophia nodded, glancing at her gun and badge on the coffee table. "And tomorrow night, he's going to try to finish what he started in Detroit." Just after midnight, Zoe called, her voice unsteady. "Mom's been on the phone all evening with someone she keeps calling a sir." I heard her say, "Tomorrow night, we finish this, and the Detroit problem gets solved permanently." The words chilled me. Adam, Zoe said, her voice breaking. I don't think she's just planning to humiliate Chief Reed. I think they're planning to destroy her completely. 18 hours remained until the meeting. We had one shot to expose 5 years of corruption, stop Ruby from shattering another family, and maybe just maybe save Sophia's career. But looking at that photo of Detective Williams, a good cop who died trying to do the right thing, I knew this fight was about more than a job. We had to make sure Sophia didn't meet the same fate as her partner. In Detroit, it had been Detective Williams who stood beside Sophia. Now, the question was whether she would share his fate. A quick shout out to our Echo Stories audience. What's your take? Was Emma right to secretly document every move, or should she have confronted Diana head on? Drop your thoughts below, because the next chapter in this family feud is about to detonate. The Oakwood Heights Community Center had never seen anything like it. 200 furious residents crammed into one space, the air practically humming with tension. Ruby had engineered the scene down to the smallest detail. Loyalists filled the front seats, cameras were strategically placed, microphones checked twice. She stood at the podium with the poise of a prosecutor about to obliterate her target. Friends and neighbors, Ruby began, her voice crisp and cutting, carried both through the hall and straight into Zoe's covert live stream. We're gathered tonight because Chief Reed has betrayed the cornerstone of our trust. She lied to us, concealed her true identity, walked among our children Armada and kept us in the dark about who she really was. Gasps and nods rippled through the crowd exactly as Ruby intended. In the front row, Thompson wore the smug expression of a man watching his plan unfold perfectly, glancing at his phone like he was checking off milestones. Behind him, a wall of Ruby's staunchest supporters formed a barrier between Sophia and anyone who might come to her defense. Without her badge or her weapon, Sophia seemed smaller, almost swallowed by the hostility around her. Ruby pressed on. Chief Reed endangered us all by hiding her past and the threats that trailed her here. Each claim was met with louder agreement, the pressure in the room building toward the inevitable verdict, resignation. But on Zoe's phone screen, the live stream audience was asking questions Ruby hadn't planned for. Why hide from neighbors? What danger was she expecting? Who else knew? The viewers online weren't buying the script as easily as those in the room. That's when I stood, heart pounding in my ears. Mrs. Miller, I called out, I have a question about neighborhood safety. Ruby's gaze sharpened, irritation flashing. This wasn't in her plan. How did you know my wife was from Detroit before we moved here? The words hit like a dropped glass. Conversations stalled. Ruby's smile faltered but quickly recovered. I researched new residents thoroughly, she said evenly. Safety requires vigilance. But confusion was already threading through the audience. Research how? I pushed, pulling up the time-stamped emails Tom had dug up. These prove you knew about Sophia's Detroit background 2 weeks before we signed our lease. How is that possible? Murmurs swelled. Ruby's voice tightened. I protect this community from threats, she snapped, her carefully crafted composure cracking. Thompson and I have worked for years to keep harmful elements away from good families. The instant she spoke Thompson's name, I saw her realize the blunder. From the back, Tom stepped forward with his laptop, projecting incriminating financial records onto the wall behind Ruby. Dangerous elements like the Wilson family? He called. Or the veteran with PTSD? Or the young couple who questioned HOA spending? Faces began to turn away from Ruby, toward the glaring evidence, but she didn't retreat. Yes, she shouted, the Wilsons harbored criminals. That veteran was unstable. Those couples were undermining legitimate leadership. We kept this place safe. Thompson was signaling frantically for her to stop, but Ruby's pride had taken the wheel. 3 years ago, Reed tried to ruin Thompson in Detroit, she bellowed, pointing at Sophia. She destroyed good men who were improving their communities. We've spent years making sure she couldn't do the same thing here. The doors at the back opened. Detective Park entered with 2 officers, but Ruby was too wrapped in her fury to notice. For 3 years, we've built a network to protect neighborhoods from corrupt cops like her. Silence fell, the weight of her own words settling over the crowd. On Zoe's live stream, thousands of comments exploded. They had just watched Ruby confess to conspiracy, harassment, and fraud in real time. Detective Park's voice cut through the air. Ruby Miller, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, blackmail, wire fraud, and civil rights violations. Shock, rage, and finally dawning horror crossed her face as the cuffs clicked. Sophia rose, walking to the front without badge or gun, simply a neighbor who had been smeared and targeted. "Real safety isn't built on fear and control," she said, voice steady. "It comes from trust, openness, and responsibility of the very things Mrs. Miller spent 5 years destroying." 6 months later, Ruby was sentenced to 30 years for what prosecutors called the largest HOA fraud scheme in state history. Thompson took a 20-year sentence when the Detroit case was reopened. Zoe started law school on a full scholarship, driven to help families victimized by similar abuse. And Sophia? She still carries her guna, only now everyone in Oakwood Heights knows exactly why, and exactly who she's protecting them from. Sometimes, half a minute changes everything, especially when the person dialing the police forgets they're calling the chief.